Welcome to the panel on Education, the Road to Opportunity. American society is exceptionally dynamic, so it imposes the need to adapt and overcome obstacles on a regular basis. Education is the constant ever present in the achievement of this goal. In addition, the integration process requires immigrants to acquire knowledge of the law, culture, and traditions of the host country. According to the Migrants Policy Institute report entitled Students of Immigrant Origin in U.S. Higher Education, more than 5.3 million students from immigrant families attended U.S. colleges and universities in 2018, representing 28% of all U.S. post-secondary students. A key group is comprised by students of immigrant origin in first generation and students born in the United States with immigrant parents, second generation. Students of immigrant origin have come to play an important role in post-secondary enrollment, accounting for nearly 60% of student population growth between 2000 and 2018. New Jersey statistics for 2019 estimate a population of more than 1.8 million immigrants aged 25 and over with the following level of education. Those with less than the school diploma, 18%, secondary education or GED, 24.4%, university or associate degree, 16.5%, bachelor's degree, 23.7%, and postgraduate, 17.3%. Since technological developments are changing the labor market, increasing the demand for skilled workers and probably significantly reducing less skilled workers. Therefore, immigrants must acquire as much education and training as possible. Since immigrants and the children of immigrants born in the United States are projected to be the primary source of future growth of the U.S. workforce, investing in their education and skills development will benefit the U.S. economy and society and these individuals and their families. This panel aims to promote the importance of education as a way for immigrants to succeed in the United States. Next, educators, researchers, and government representatives will talk about this important topic. The panel will be moderated by Juana Inurritegui, a member of the Board of Directors of IACO.
Dear panelists and participants, welcome to the 2021 Immigrant Integration Conference organized by IACO. My name is Juana Isabel Inurritegui, and I will be the facilitator for this fantastic segment on education, the pathway for opportunities. The American society is exceptionally dynamic and imposes the necessity of adapting and overcoming an obstacle to reinvent yourself. Education is the ever-present constant in achieving this goal. Also, the process of acculturation requires immigrants to acquire knowledge of the law, culture, and traditions of the host country. This seminar aims to promote the importance of education as a way for immigrants to succeed in the United States. As an immigrant myself, I'm honored to participate in this event and to have a chance to talk about this topic. I started my career at a community-based organization studying English, or ESL, and transferred to a community college to earn my associate degree in human services. After a while, I completed my bachelor's degree at Rutgers University and recently earned my master's degree in social work. I can testify that education is the key to success and opportunities. Please join me and welcome our first presenter, Dr. Jean Badalova, Senior Analyst at the Migration Policy Institute. Jean Badalova is a Senior Policy Analyst and Migration Policy Institute, and manager of the Migration Data Hub, a one-stop online resource that provides instant access to the latest facts, stats, and maps covering US and global data on immigration and immigrant integration. She's also a non-resident fellow with Migration Policy Institute Europe. Her areas of expertise include the impacts of immigrants on society and labor markets, social and economic mobility of first and second generation youth and young adults, and the policies and practices regulating immigration and integration of highly skilled workers and foreign students in the United States and other countries. Her book, Skilled Immigrant and Native Workers in the United States, was published in 2006. Dr. Badalova earned her PhD in sociology with a specialization in demography from the University of California, Irvine, an MBA from Roosevelt University, and Bachelor of the Arts in Economics from the Academy of Economic Studies in Moldova. Please welcome Dr. Badalova.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zhana Batalova, and thank you so much, Juana, for the introductions, and thank you so much for the invitation to this conference. So like Juana, I'm also an immigrant, and probably like many of you, and I came to the United States to study, and definitely a testament of the importance of education and higher education and the opportunities that education offers to immigrants and children of immigrants in terms of their career opportunities, health outcomes, social mobility, political and civic participation, and all sorts of integration and social mobility measures. Currently I am with the Migration Policy Institute, and for those of you who don't know about us, we are a research organization in Washington, D.C., and we study immigration and immigrant integration trends in the United States and other countries. And one of the topics for the Institute and for myself is the immigrant origin students and the outcomes and the barriers that they experience in obtaining their education. So my task for today is to give you an overview about the numbers and the characteristics of immigrant origin students. It's an important and growing population, and more and more educators and policymakers really paying greater attention to this population because of its prominence among American students. So who are the immigrant origin students? I'll be talking about two groups. One are the immigrants themselves, so people who were born abroad and came to the United States for all sorts of reasons, including to study. And the second group are the US-born children from immigrant families. And the reason we combine these two groups together is the opportunities and barriers that immigrant origin students experience are very much tied to the immigrant status, either of their own or that of their parents and their family members. I'll also compare, to put it in context, I will compare the numbers and characteristics to the so-called the third generation students, and these are the students who were born in the United States to US-born parents. All right, so what do we know? In 2018, there were about 19 million students who attended US colleges and universities. Of them, 5.3 million were of immigrant origin. If we look back in the past, in 2000, that number was only 2.9 million. So we are talking about the significant growth of this population in less than 2 decades. And what's important is that the growth of the immigrant origin student population was much faster than the growth of students from US born families. The immigrant origin population grew by 82%, a significant number, versus the 15% among US among the students from US born families. Because of this high growth, immigrant origin students now account for more than a quarter of US students in post-secondary education, so 28% versus only 20% in 2000. So which group drives this trend? And that's very important because the characteristics of the population that accounts for the largest number and share will determine the types of outcomes and barriers that they will face. So the fastest growing population are US born children from immigrant families. So this population, why this population is important? Well, first of all, because of the numbers, right? Demography to some degree determines the outcomes. But it's also important because this population is US born. So they have US citizenship by birth, and that means that they also have the same access to educational and social benefits and opportunities as US born children from US born families. Very important. What's also important is that out of the entire immigrant origin population, the majority are US born and have citizenship by birth, but another large share, 16%, are US citizens by naturalization. So in other words, the overwhelmingly immigrant origin student population enrolled in US colleges and universities are US citizens, either by birth or naturalization, or otherwise legally present population, which puts us in a very different perspective. These numbers put in a very different perspective the debates that we have about immigrant students. Often the emphasis is on undocumented students, and whereas in reality, the overwhelming majority of these students are US citizens or otherwise legally present population. And what's also important in this population is that it doesn't only concentrate in the 1 or 2 states like California and New York, the large immigrant states, which we all know about, but it also quite visible and present across the entire country. The shares are high, and the states have witnessed large, fast growth of this population. So we are talking about not only states like California, and New York, and Florida, and Texas, which have traditionally had large immigrant origin populations, but we also have states like Nevada and Massachusetts and Washington and Connecticut and Hawaii, where even though the absolute numbers might not be that big, but in terms of their share of all students enrolled in post-secondary educations, that share is high, and even higher than at the national level. Why this population is also important. So the numbers, the distribution across the country, another characteristic we want to keep in mind, and that is their racial and ethnic composition. The immigrant origin students are a diverse group, racially and ethnically diverse group, and they account for a large share of students who are racial and ethnic minorities. And the renewed protest against systemic racism and discrimination based on race and ethnicity have only further elevated the issues of racial equity and racial inequality in all spheres in the U.S. society, including students' access and to post-secondary education and their ability to graduate with degrees in a timely manner. And also why this population is important is that in terms of their own racial and ethnic composition, immigrant origin students are themselves more likely to be racial and ethnic minorities, primarily Latino and Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So taken all together, what do these characteristics and trends mean for policy making, for service providers, for university and college staff and professors, and also fellow students? One thing is obvious, and that is the face of US college and university students is changing. Today's students are more likely to come from immigrant origin families than in the past. And importantly, that this population is either US citizens by birth or naturalization, or otherwise legally present students. They are also more likely to be racial and ethnic minorities than the students from US-born families. And as a group of interest to policymakers, higher education administrators, immigrant and education advocates, workforce development experts, the immigrant origin students are at the intersection of three policy areas. Number one is the state's post-secondary credential attainment and workforce development policies. And why they matter? Well, numbers, of course, important, as I mentioned, but what's also very important to remember is that because of the demographic changes in the US society, fewer babies are born, people live longer, the number of workers is decreasing, while the population that need to be supported, those who are retiring, is growing. So who will be the future workers? And what the studies show is that the overwhelming majority of these workers will come from immigrant origin families. So the investments that are made in this population today will pay off for the country overall in the long term. And what's important is that it's not only the trend in the handful of states, it's really a trend both the educational and workforce wise across the country in many, many states. This population is important for racial equity efforts. As I mentioned, the national reckoning with systemic discrimination and racial inequality really was stirred by the Black Lives Matter movements and continues to be important and really touches on all aspects, including higher education. And the third area is immigration policies. As I mentioned, the majority of immigrant origin students are either US citizens or legally present populations. However, many of them come from families where at least one, either parent or sibling or other family member might not have legal status in the United States. And especially the situation when it's with parents, students, regardless of their own legal status, will face higher barriers to enrollment, to post-secondary education, staying and completing. And there is plenty of research and evidence that you see in your own lives and in your communities that point to that fact. So the social and economic trajectories of immigrant origin students are very much tied to the situation of the immigrant families and the policies that either target these families, like the infamous public charge policy, or that facilitates their integration in the American society. So I would like you to take as a key takeaway, I'd like you to remember that the numbers are growing, that it's a diverse population. It matters for many states and many communities around the world. And there is a very clear economic argument to be made that the investments made into this population will bring benefits and will pay off in the long run for the economy and the social well-being of all Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dr. Badanova? Your numbers were great. Thank you very much for enlightening us with these data, and especially to recognize the importance of immigrant students in our country. Thank you very much. Secondly, we have Ms. Christina Schratz. She was born and raised in Passaic, New Jersey. She graduated from Passaic schools. Her mother came from the Dominican Republic, where she worked and raised her and two other sisters. Christina is the president of the Passaic Board of Education, where she has been working since 2017. At the same time, she has developed a career in the financial banking since 2000. Welcome, and please feel free to share with us all your knowledge.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Christina Schratz. I actually work for Valley Bank, where I started in 2018. However, my banking career, I started right after high school, actually my last year of high school, as a part-time teller. Now I moved up as a community business lender, So I work in the minority communities, helping the businesses to prosper and helping the businesses to seek for resources to grow their businesses. As well, I am, like Juana said, I am the president of the Passaic Board of Education, where I was elected in 2017, and I have been the president for about a year now. That is, I guess, my motivation, continue to help my community and continue to, as well as I have my own mentors that have seen me succeed. It's important for them now to see me pay it forward for our residents and our students to succeed here in Passaic. So that's why it's a thrill for me to be the president of the Board of Education and also a member of Valley Bank, which is a community bank as well. So today, we are going to speak about the pandemic, how the pandemic has impacted our schools and also within our community. So what were the main impacts that the pandemic inflicted on our community? So I'm just going to take out my quick presentation. Okay, so there are two main areas of impact that we had to address with our families from an education standpoint: access to the internet and computer devices and support for families. We pride ourselves on being a district that is in tune with our families and with our families' needs in mind. These were areas that we were working on even before the pandemic. So we identified a few areas which one of the areas was the access to internet, right, and the computer devices. So one of the things that the district was able to do is we were able to accommodate many families within our district with hotspots. We purchased hotspots, and the number between last year, beginning of the pandemic, till currently was around 1,000 hotspots purchased. We also were able to provide families, students within each family Chromebooks. The count approximately from the start of the pandemic till today is over 3,000. And currently, since the start of the pandemic, we're able to provide each family with meals. So what we would do is that we will have selected days in each schools where families would come in and get the meals, which is breakfast and lunch for each child that's enrolled in the Passaic schools. And as of a few months ago, our count was over 3 million meals. So we continue to do that, as well as a partnership with our city, which the city is also giving meals on a 2-day-a-week basis to the families as well. Many of our families have limited resources, and because of our budgeting and acquisition of grants and funding, we're able to provide support to families in many areas. What the pandemic did was magnify the situation and hastened the need to close the gaps between resource availability and family needs, but it also caused us to think outside the box and reinvent ways to address these needs. We immediately jumped into action to close the technology gap by making sure in the first couple of months, every family had access to a device and internet service through partnerships that allowed us to give families with limited resources hotspots. Then we partnered with the city to find ways to provide our families with sustenance and additional specialized support. Since we closed the school buildings, which we continue to be virtual, up until now, and including the summer, we had food distribution stations set up around the city. It does not matter what the status of a family is, our community is like a big family, and we are here to help every single family. Now we're going to speak about what are the remedies you will seek in the coming year to revive the people you serve, particularly immigrants. As we move into the new year, our teams at the district and school levels and our partnerships with the city and other organizations like yourself are all looking for ways to continue to support families. This was not an overnight situation, and there won't be overnight fixes. I suspect we will be dealing with the effects of pandemic for some time. There are probably situations that we are not yet aware of. The important thing going forward is that we check in with our families constantly to see what their needs are and make adjustments to support them. Our focus will be academics and those systems that positively affect academics, specifically when it comes to our immigrant families. We have a bilingual program that has been named a model program by the state of New Jersey, and we are going to continue to build on that program. We also have, and this is coming September of this year to our Passaic high schools, and it's called the International Network Academy Program. That's starting up this fall at the Passaic High School to provide the best learning environment for our multilingual learners. As a district, we are also focused on creating an environment in all of our schools that is more inclusive and with the comms work in cultural relevant pedagogy. Now, on the banking side, we also provide, and when I was in the branches as a manager, I would provide financial literacies to the schools. So what we would do is that we will provide days starting from kindergarten all the way up to seniors, where the bankers as professionals will come in and teach our students about finances. Whether it was in ESL class, whether it was in English speaking class, every student that was interested, every teacher that was interested got the opportunity to have that professional come in and speak in reference to the finances. to me, it was very important because I do see that and again, my mother comes from the Dominican Republic, and I was blessed to be, to work in banking and to know how the ins and outs of banking is and how to run an account. That enabled me to assist my family. That helped me assist my family on what is banking, what is a checking account, how important is a savings account. So to me, it is very important to introduce these financial literacies to the students where they can also show themselves how important it is, especially when they're going into college, right? Because this is when they're going to accrue some debt. So how important it is for them to know what banking is and for them to show also their parents or their loved one or their family what they learned from a professional. And today, what I'm also introducing is when it comes to banking and showing our students is the importance of knowing that out there, fraud cases, when it comes to banking, when it comes to a credit fraud, or when it comes to computer technology fraud, how important it is to know how to seek assistance when they are a victim of fraud, and how to assist their families. Like, let's say if they get a phone call and you think that PSC&G is able to call you when they're not. This is all, educational work that we as professionals provide our students as well. Let me see. What are the priority resources needed to achieve your goals? How will you seek them? Like many urban school districts, one of our biggest challenges is funding. I think, we all know that, we want to do much. We want to bring on programs. We want to do the best for our students, and we want to have the best of the best. But, funding continues to be a big challenge. But we managed through creating programming and partnerships to continue to invest in our students and make strides toward becoming the best. We hope to strengthen those partnerships and find ways that will open more doors for our students. We strive to continue to be fiscally responsible and look for opportunities and partnerships to provide our students with whatever opportunities we can. So again, bringing in the professionals on our board, we have a number of professionals that all are part of some board or know any organizations that they can provide information to our students, whether they come from immigrant families or not. Everyone has an equal opportunity to know about these partnerships and to be able to be part of the partnerships to the success of our students. So I hope this gives you a little bit of, right, of what was going on in Delta State Public Schools. There's much more. Currently, right now, we are preparing for the end of the year graduations, the end of the year awards. So it's a pretty busy time of the year, but it's also a happy and fun time of the year because this is where we celebrate the success, especially this year where many of us and many of the students have been presented with challenges. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Christina?
I can ask a question.
Yes.
Christina, a great presentation and also overview of what a community-oriented private institution like a bank can do, and really touch on important aspects of life during the pandemic. The switch to virtual learning. We know from research that it affected immigrant students and immigrants or origin students much more because of the initial barriers that they had. So the pandemic only aggravated the low income, family background, a lack of technology access. So can you tell a little bit more about what was done in terms of not only providing kids with iPads and also access to the internet, which is also important, but also educating their parents to help them to be able to use this technology, because obviously the shift to online education happened very fast, but for parents of especially younger kids, the both ability to manage all the scheduling and keeping the engagement of kids with school, with material, with the schooling material was very important. So have you worked with parents like what you did with the financial literacy, which is fantastic? If you can say a few words about that, that would be great.
Yeah. So of course, yes, there was a number of changes that was brought onto the district. We were able to get more of communication for parents on our site. Let's say if there was any issues with technology, they were able to go on site and request a meeting, or say, my iPad is not working, or my Chromebook is not working, or I don't have any internet, availability. We also had surveys out to parents, where the surveys out to parents gave the administration the ability to see, if this particular parent is going to be a parent that's going to be more technology or more phone, right? On how the parents are responding to the surveys. We also have a number of, and yes, because internet is internet, right? Social media. So we also have I've seen a number of parent support on let's say, Facebook. That has been tremendous, because many parents have been able to resolve their issues on there. If they need to speak to me as president, they can email me or call me directly. And that's been ongoing for the number of years that I've been here. However, I do know that the parent liaison is the most important position within the schools, because that is the person that communicates constantly with the parent. And that is the person that is the liaison. So there is support for the parent, whether it's going towards speaking to the educator or speaking to the principal. That parent liaison is always available for each parent to speak to. Yes.
I do have a question, and probably both of you could answer me. What are the plans as far as mental health for all these children? I mean, we all know that this year has been the worst year as far as challenges for parents, for families, for students at all levels, right? Since preschool, elementary, high school, and college. So do you have a plan for these type of challenges? Because I mean, I'm a social worker, so I work with children, and I see that this is going to be a recurrent topic, behavior, mental health, depression, anxiety. So what are the plans? And for both of you, like at the high school level, at the college level, if we have data about these topics?
Yes. So if you go on our district, you're going to see that our board is made up within committees. And one of the committees is committees when it comes into curriculum or special education. Mental health and also special education concerned students, when it comes to that, they're in special education, has been a topic that has been a big topic. We have programs where we have reached out and we are continuing, because every day we continue to add on, where we are providing the mental health assistance. We have a department, which is the advocacy department, that works with the parent and the student when it comes to mental health. Now, when we go ahead and open the schools, which we are in projection of opening our schools in the summer, and that's where we're going to start opening into the fall. Of course, that's going to be tweaked, right? Because that is going to be in person. So that is where we're going to really, really see where we have to continue to seek, where we have to grow into supporting not only the students, but also the parents and even the staff. But so that is a topic that we currently continue to work on, because that is a priority for us. Yes.
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, so now we move into our third presenter. This is Ms. Lisette Arias. She has an MBA. She's passionate about developing strategic, clear, and inspiring communications. Over the past 10 years, Ms. Arias has worked exclusively in the non-for-profit sphere and developed the skills and expertise needed to execute successful project and communications marketing plans. Having led a $500,000 grassroots nonprofit, Ms. Arias knows how to work within the restrictions of tight budgets and how to capitalize on available resources to deliver results. Currently, she serves on the board of directors of the Arlington Committee of 100 and the Child and Family Network Centers, and works as a communications manager at US Ignite. Arias earned her bachelor's degree from Moravian College and her MBA from Villanova University. Ms. Arias, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Juana. I am very glad to be here. And I think what I am going to do is just put a human face to the various topics and issues we're talking about today. I am one of the undocumented students that went to college back in 2011. I graduated from Moravian College. Moravian College is a private liberal arts school that offered me a handsome scholarship, so I was able to go to college. But the issue with undocumented students and the immigrant population made it so difficult for me to find hope that I would one day graduate from college, even though I was a valedictorian from my high school and had various extracurricular activities. Regardless, I was able to go to college, graduate, and I came back to the Arlington, Northern Virginia area in 2011, and I started working with Dream Project as a volunteer at first, and then as a staff member. And what the Dream Project's purpose was to empower undocumented students to go to college. And for the past 10 years, the Dream Project has been able to help undocumented students and then those that had DACA to go to college and figure out how to do it. I had been leading the Dream Project up to about a month ago when I stepped down from the executive director role. But during the pandemic, what we found with our students, which were mainly coming from undocumented families, completely undocumented, or kind of mixed status families, is that the pandemic affected them the hardest. And what we did to help them was figure out how they needed help. And what we found out based on calls we made out to them is that they needed just someone to check in with them, see how they were doing, just that human aspect to it. We also found out some of them really needed help with paying rent and other very essential needs. So we established a emergency relief fund. And over the course of a year, we have been able to award over $80,000 to about 60 students to support them to pay for rent. And had we not done that, very few organizations and counties and cities were willing to support their undocumented populations. So that's why we felt very strongly about reaching out outside of our area of expertise, because the Dream Project was mostly an organization focused on providing scholarship, access, and also mentoring to students that wanted to go to college versus a direct services organization. So we expanded because our families and students really require that help. And as we did that, we also learned that many of our families, even before the pandemic, have been living in a very tight situation. And the pandemic just really collapsed the whole system they had in place. And it wasn't, up to them to fix it, but Dream Project helped figure out how to put a Band-Aid on it. The system is still very skewed to not awarding them or rewarding them for the work they put into our community. Immigrants pay a lot of taxes to the US, in state taxes, federal taxes, just buying something at a gas station, but they don't get the benefits from it. So our students and families are very much part of the society, but not rewarded for being part of it and contributing to it. So with the Dream Project, we were very happy to expand into that world. Next, the organization faces the challenge of how to step really into that position of providing direct services or stepping back from it, because there are so many other organizations that aim to do that as well. And then also realizing or focusing on really providing for our families to stabilize their situation. In another organization, I am now the board member of the Child and Family Network Center, which is also focused in Northern Virginia, and focused on providing early childhood education to low-income students in the area, mostly immigrants, students of immigrants. We also have been noticing that the community we serve has been hit very hard by the pandemic. A lot of the parents work in the positions and the jobs that had to be canceled when the pandemic started, such as housekeeping, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, hotel services, and the such. So our families had been suffering for quite some time. And one thing that we did there is bring the early childhood education to the families in a virtual format. Thanks to a partnership with Amazon, we were able to provide tablets to our students so that they could continue learning throughout the pandemic. A lot of those families wouldn't have been able to, have access to that education prior to that deal we had. And so it's very, and I think with Dream Project, we also benefited from our parents learning the technology as well. We had a workshop where we taught parents how to get on Zoom and do meetings that way, and that enabled them to access various webinars we had there. So I think the pandemic, even though it provided us a lot of challenges, it also provided us the opportunity, the kind of push to really educate and promote the adoption of technologies that we previously did not have, that urgency, with our community. So that was important. And I've noticed that in both the CFNC work and the Dream Project work. And also at CFNC, given that a lot of the parents of the kids going into the programs were not working, we were able to provide food pickups for 10 weeks in Alexandria, Virginia. Hundreds of bags of food were distributed to our students and families, which just supports the food insecurity solutions that we had made available. At Dream Project, it was funny, we tried to figure out ways to get our families and students gift cards for whatever reason. I think we kind of stretched it a little bit for some for some situations. We did like a raffle, and we paid parents to offer their services and gave them a gift card for the money that came in. Just whatever we could think of to supplement their income, because we knew it had been hit pretty hard by the pandemic. And yeah, so I think that's kind of an overall of how the pandemic affected the immigrant population in Northern Virginia. Based on my work with Dream Project and CFNC. And I guess talking more about the remedies that we are going to be looking for in the next year to help the people we serve. With CFNC, which focuses with early childhood education, and with the news really spotlighting that childhood education, childcare is very important for women to get back into the workforce. It just accentuates the importance of the work that we do at CFNC of providing more than just childcare, but also it is just the childcare. The parents need their kids to go somewhere so that they can go to work, and we need to figure out how we can pay those early childhood educators more, so that those jobs are available, and so that our communities have a place for their students, for their kids to be students and learn and grow, and also for them to continue earning for their families. And so the work of CFNC has never been more important than now. And we're really working hard to figure out how we can expand in our area and provide that very core service to our community, especially our immigrant community that is really benefiting from the work of CFNC. And with Dream Project, I think one of the key things that we're, since it is Dream Project is an organization that focuses on undocumented students and dreamers, the remedies we are seeking is really this action on federal relief of or adjustment of status for our families and students, especially our students. For so long, these students have been working, studying very hard, but have no access to adjust their status. And even though they're, I know with Dream Project, we have some students that have graduated college, but they cannot enter the workforce fully with their credentials because of that missing 9-digit social security number. And I had been there when I graduated college. I did not have a social security number. I luckily benefited from DACA a couple years later, but our students now really need that fix, that immigration fix, so that they can enter the workforce legitimately and earn and doing the most to fit their potential, because a lot of our students have been graduating in STEM fields and can really provide for the community and the whole country, or if they are given the chance. So that's the main issue, like we're seeking for our Dream Project immigrants. And I think, like Christina mentioned, funding is a resource that we really need to achieve our goals. With CFNC, we need funding to meet the demand that we have seen increase. The CFNC expenses increased by over 45% because of the pandemic, and our operating budget is just growing more. And in order to be more equitable and inclusive, we just have more expenses due to that. And with Dream Project as well, we need funding to support the rising costs of higher education. And I think that's been an issue and a reality for some time now, but it continues to be an unsolved issue and something that we really, really are looking for for Dream Project and those students there and immigrants in the whole area. And I think I talked a lot, so I will, let you all ask questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions? I do actually have two questions or comments. I don't know. First of all, I love the idea that you included early childhood education because I think that there is this myth that formal education starts in elementary school, and it's not. Education starts since birth. And I love that you mentioned the importance of quality early childhood workforce in order to promote the employment of those families. I love that. Thank you very much for bringing that up. And secondly, how can we change the stigma behind of those undocumented students? How can we as society change that myth stigma of those students? I don't know, probably it's a a big question with not a one answer, but
yeah,
I hear it a lot.
I think one of the things Dream Project does well is highlighting the success stories of students that, regardless of all the obstacles they faced, were able to overcome and succeed. And I think that helps to change the stigma of, being an undocumented student, going to college, and then getting ahead that way. And I believe another very helpful method to getting rid of that negative connotation of being undocumented is framing that being undocumented it didn't just happen to you because of a bad decision you made or your parents made. It's because the whole system is designed to keep certain people, certain brown people out. And until we start referring to the system as being flawed, and it's the system's fault, not the individual's fault, there won't be that freedom from stigma, because you will always be searching for who is at fault. So I think that is one way, or one thing we need to start talking more seriously about and pointing it out, is that the whole immigration system is flawed, needs fixing, and certain people are just, I don't want to say victims, but bystanders of it and caught up in it.
Thank you very much. Any other question for Lisette? Nope. So then we move to Mr. Carlos Valentin Jr. Carlos Valentin Jr. currently serves as the Executive Director of Aspira, Inc. of New Jersey, with a professional background in the nonprofit, political, and government sectors. Carlos began working extensively with nonprofit organizations starting in the mid-1990s. As an advocate for the undeserved, a proponent for youth empowerment, civic engagement, and advocacy, as well as effective juvenile justice alternative. Carlos has dedicated his entire life and career to providing opportunities and resources locally and statewide. Since the very beginning, Carlos's connection to Aspira was firmly entrenched with the organization. First, as an aspirante, serving both as a member of the board, as a student representative for New Jersey, and Aspira's national offices. Today, he leads a staff of 30 employees in Newark, New Jersey, while overseeing a multi-million-dollar budget, serving thousands of youth and their families annually. During his leadership, Carlos has generated millions of dollars in grant and donation support for programmatic and community-based initiatives and services. As an innovator, Carlos has created a duo of programs that has since been replicated by other Aspira affiliates. He started and developed the Evening Reporting Center in the state of New Jersey for juveniles in conjunction with the Juvenile Justice Commission of Essex County. Please welcome Carlos Valentin.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Jaco, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here. To my fellow panelists, thank you very much for the work that you all do. It's very much needed in our community, so I commend each and every one of you for the work that you all do as well. Pretty much, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Aspira, but I'm going to try to talk about the topics here without making it a whole infomercial for Aspira as an organization. So the first thing I'm going to tackle is the concept of acculturation, right? It's kind of like a buzzword, and some people are afraid it may carry a negative connotation to it. Some people may feel they're giving up. Salud. I'm sorry, my daughter. Bless you, baby. I'm a single dad. My apologies. So acculturation, the idea of maybe that we're giving up of our culture, of our identities in order to assimilate into another society or whatever. And I look at it differently. I say we own the word, we own the process of acculturation. It's more of the evolution of a society. We look at, our culture here in the United States, and Latinos, we add spice, we add variety, we add our imprint and influence into all aspects of American culture. Everything from food to our customs and traditions, to our music, to our language, and ultimately to acceptance. And that's a real big part of our community establishing themselves and also setting up future generations as they come up to be more comfortable in their environment in the society here in the United States of America. So I think that, we should not shy away from that word or that process. We should own it and face it head on. And I think that our young people and generations ahead will be much better off by us dealing with that face first. So I wanted to talk about that. Also, the role of education. The great equalizer, right? Education, the way to achieve the American dream in this country. But obviously, in particular for undocumented immigrants, as Ms. Arias mentioned earlier, that can be a real barrier. It could be a real hard thing to overcome. But learning the structure of education is important. Teaching our young people what are the steps of the education system here in the United States, and also what is the accessibility and what hurdles do we need to overcome in order to achieve the education necessary for our children to achieve their potential. And I think being honest about that is part of the conversation that our families need to have. Obviously, as a part of a larger movement as a whole, there are things that need to be changed. There's a lot of change that needs to be done in order to ensure fair equitability for our children. But the reality is some of that change may not come in their lifetimes. But the seeds and the push has to start somewhere, and it should start with our generation as we move forward and try to break down the doors and make education accessible to all. Our children should have that fair share, but also being honest about what those barriers are and learning how to navigate it. There are a number of organizations that provide support to our children that can help them try to navigate that system. And there are ways that we have to teach our kids and learn as a family, as Latino families, in order to overcome these things. As President Schratz mentioned in her past, one of her past hats as a banker in the banking world, financial literacy is critical. At Aspira, we work with Banco Popular and also TD Bank to do financial workshops for our families. We teach our kids at a very young age, at 4th grade, how to manage a budget. And we also work with the families as well. During this tough time during the pandemic, our families have traditionally learned how to struggle. I mean, jamón picado is a delicacy, when I grew up, learning how to make things spread, make things last, and also feed, multiple mouths in the household and making that stretch. Well, how do you make that happen? But also look to the future and budget for your education, or budget for things that you need in order to help you get to that point. So it's not just budgeting for survival, but also budgeting to move forward as well. So understanding those types of things and teaching those concepts are very important. Also, with regards to education, what are the basic skills necessary to function in this society? Fortunately, there are a lot of places where, having Spanish as a second language is a bonus, and that's because of our population, but also being able to learn English. for our families, especially our undocumented families that come here, having both languages is a plus. Sometimes when people, and I go back to the word acculturation and unfortunately assimilation, people get afraid of that stuff. But our people should own it. We should own being bilingual. That's a beautiful thing. People pay to have those skills, and we bring that to the table. So that's something we need to own. And also teaching our kids the specific skills necessary to excel. Letting our kids know that regardless of the hurdles, if you have your dreams, you need higher education to achieve those dreams, then there should be a plan in place to achieve that, and working as a unit and encouraging our kids to get there. And that's where organizations like Aspida come into play, because we provide that support that unfortunately a lot of our parents don't have either the experience or just the general know-how in terms of how to navigate that for the kids and their families. And a lot of times we can lose a lot of kids just simply because they don't have that support or even that encouragement at home. Parents are very overwhelmed with managing the household and just simply providing, keeping the light on and food in the refrigerator. So organizations like Aspida, we try to step in and we try to bridge that gap and provide that support necessary for our children to succeed. With regards to the pandemic specifically impacting the Latino community in New Jersey, mortality rates amongst Latinos in New Jersey, with 20% of the mortality suffered through the pandemic over the past year. The infection rate was 30% Latino in New Jersey, and these are staggering numbers. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One of the common issues that we have in our community is a distrust of government or of official entities, right? Where, afraid of getting deported, afraid of, being singled out or whatever the case may be. And that lack of trust in the system is not only with undocumented Latinos as well, it's with documented Latinos. You look at what Hurricane Maria did to Puerto Rico and how that was addressed. But that's probably a whole nother panel discussion here. But the system is broken with regards to addressing emergency issues in our community. And the pandemic just showed us another example of how. So being able to help our families be able to navigate these emergency issues is very critical. The lack of trust within going to the hospital. A lot of our families don't practice preventive medical care. The emergency room becomes your doctor when something is really bad. And that's something that needs to change. At Aspida, we're a founding member of the Center of Excellence for Latino Health, which is a group of people that got together in New Jersey through Claremont Hospital to be able to do outreach and to be able to promote preventative medical care amongst the Latino communities. And that's very important in order for us to be prepared to handle pandemics like these when they come up, any health crises. So that's another thing that's really important. Also, with regard to education and the impact of the pandemic on education, you have naturally the summer slide, right? The summer slide educational gap. Our children are usually faced with that summer slide gap because we're not continuously getting educated during the summer. Less and less structured programming for our children during those summer months, whereas kids in affluent communities are afforded those opportunities, and that education gap gradually widens throughout the years. Well, now we have the pandemic, which forced everyone to learn remotely, caused had a tremendous impact on our kids and their education. First of all, just let's talk about the hardware. Once again, I commend President Stratz for all the laptops they were able to get out in the communities because it was sorely needed. Our children also, a lot of them didn't have access to internet access or Wi-Fi spots. So that was something that in the city of Newark in particular, they were able to provide access for everyone in the area to have access to that. And that's very important. But even aside from that, space. If you have a regular family that has 2 or 3 kids at home and they all have to be on those laptops and they have to be concentrating and paying attention to their curriculum for 8 hours a day, and they're all in the same room, that's very distracting. Different grade levels, different situations. That's a huge burden on our kids. So the pandemic forcing us indoors and having to learn in those environments really, really put our kids at a disadvantage. Also, with regards to a lot of the education levels of our parents that are out there working some of the lower skill level jobs, or they just don't have the education to be able to assist our children with their curriculums. So at Aspira, one of the things we did was, aside from providing our traditional after-school enrichment programming, we kind of went back to our roots in helping our young children, our young people, with their work from the daytime, from 3 to 6. Instead of doing just enrichment programming, now we're helping them with the work that they weren't able to catch up with during the day, to try to keep them progressing as best as possible so they can finish out their school year proficiently. So we had to pivot with regards to that. And that takes me to the remedies on how to revive, our communities. In particular, in the city of Newark, Aspira provides what I like to call X Factor services. And those are services that are not commonly identified. You can't necessarily apply for money to help families with, getting to their school locations to pick up their meals, which once again is a tremendous, tremendous thing that went understated. A lot of our children rely on those breakfast and lunch meals in the school districts in order to survive. What the pandemic did by keeping these, our kids out of the schools for those meals, now that's an extra financial burden on our families who were not prepared to provide that many extra meals for the kids in the household. So that's another issue that the pandemic really hurt our families. So we had 4 vans at our location. If we needed to take people back and forth, we offered our services to the schools to be an extension as well, to get into the communities, especially as people were afraid. We kind of went in, when they say that, you have the military goes into a war zone, so to speak, everybody's running away, but they're running, in. That was us. We were running headstrong into the mix to try to make sure that our families had what they needed to weather the storm. Also, another big thing that we really leaned on during this time was the trust that we've earned in our communities. The fact that families know that they can call Aspira, or if they hear, of something going on with Aspira, that they feel comfortable in knowing that they're not going to be exposed or singled out. Whereas they won't trust going to a hospital or to City Hall. They know that if, it's an Aspira event, they know that they can go there with trust and be treated fairly and pretty much like family. So taking advantage of that trust we had, we were able to try to provide a myriad of services, or even just disseminate information of things that our families needed to learn and needed to know. And if they hear it from us, then they felt more comfortable with it rather than seeing it in the news or reading about it in the newspaper. So that trust that we've earned, it's something not to take lightly. And we definitely use that to our community's advantage in order to be able to get them what they needed to be able to weather the storm. Some of our priority resources, everybody says funding, yes, funding, but I'd like to actually add a caveat to that: flexible funding. A lot of times, you go out there, you get funding, but it's earmarked and it has to be used for one specific thing. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of organizations were handcuffed in that they needed to pivot very quickly, but couldn't. And some funders were still being restricted with their monies. In particular, I had one foundation, the Victoria Foundation, that was very good with this. They said, we understand what's going on. If you need to take the funding that we've allotted you for this year and use it for other things that you may need to provide for the community, feel free to go ahead, submit your report, explain to us what you did. And that was huge. That was huge in us getting staff trained to be able to provide services remotely. That was huge in being able to get things out to the families in the communities. So it was huge on a whole lot of reasons. And that allowed Aspira to pretty much only take a 2-week hiatus, get the entire staff equipped and prepared, and then hit the ground running 2 weeks later to continue to provide services in a remote environment. So that was very huge. And also another resource, a priority resource, is staff who are willing and able to adjust. Hiring staff with varying skill sets. Sometimes we kind of pigeonhole and say, we need a person that's, very good with this skill for this position. And in being able to hire people that had kind of like overlapping skill sets and varying skill sets help, in particular in this time when we all needed to lean on each other as well. And also facilities to provide services safely. That was something that, facilities are at a premium, especially with social distancing rules and guidelines. Having facility space is very, very important during this time. If you have it, utilize every square foot of it. You know, a lot of school districts now letting organizations have access to their facilities. So trying to find a place, whether it's a local community center or a local organization that may not be utilizing the space at the current time, definitely look and identify space that you can put to good use to provide services to our community. So with that, I can be long-winded with this. There are a whole lot of things, but with that, I'll end it there, open it up for any questions. But once again, I thank you all for the opportunity to be here with you. Gracias. Y pa'lante.
Thank you very much, Carlos. One of the things that it really caught my attention was the fact that we think education has to be formal or higher education, but it could come from anywhere and anything. You mentioned how to work on social skills with children. Work on education could be just as easy as taking an English class. Education can be as simple as taking a parenting class. It doesn't have to be the college institution, the one that offers you education. It could be anywhere, right? And people sometimes are afraid of that word, education. They're afraid because they think they lack all these skills to get an education, and it's not necessarily the case. So thank you very much for that. Do we have any question for Carlos? No.
I don't have a question for you, but you know, all of the presentations kind of made me think about, you know, kind of if we step out from that immediate moment where we are and think about where we're going forward, and because there will be probably another crisis, and the question is, are we better prepared now for a future crisis? And so I think it's true to say that even though through the pandemic we were all in the same storm, but we were in different boats, and many individuals, families, and communities experienced the pandemic in a much more difficult and worse way because of the pre-existing challenges that they had, whether it's the undocumented status or low income or working multiple jobs or having not having access to technology, or even if you have access to technology, you might not have skills that you need to be able to use that technology in the setting that is now needed. As Carlos mentioned, manage the education of several kids who might be at different grades and motivate the kids to learn the academic content. But what also the presentations to me highlighted is the immense desire and spirit at the community level, and being creative and really looking at this the crisis also as an opportunity to advance the needs and the interests of the community. What Lizette mentioned is that with digital skills and really taking that, leveraging crisis and turning it as an opportunity, and also I think that I hope that there would be greater realization at the level of local governments how important it is to pay attention to the immigrant communities, not only during the moments of immense crisis when, because of the mistrust of the government, the public health efforts are stalling. So how do you build that trust with the community members, so later on you don't have to overcome that barrier as well? So hopefully, there will be also greater attention and really awareness on the part of multiple levels of government to address, to start switching and tinkering and improving and adjusting probably will not. It will be unrealistic to expect that there will be, we should expect the system getting fixed right away. But if we start making kind of incremental steps by making adjustments, by providing better information about the community, you asked Juana about, how do we solve a major crisis, a major challenge of, incorrect stereotypes and about certain immigrants. It's the information that has to be presented at multiple levels, not only by immigrant community organizations, but also by other non-immigrant related organizations. And so having a bank that is working with immigrant community, you have people in the bank who now become more champions because they know more about the community that they're serving. So, I really hope that we won't waste this crisis because we will realize that there are opportunities to leverage the lessons that we learned and the spirit and ingenuity of people, communities at various levels that stepped in and provided excellent services at the time of a great need. So I'm hopeful. I really hope that going forward there will be qualitative shifts, maybe not quick ones, but qualitative shifts and adjustments to lift all boats, not only certain boats.
Yeah, I agree. There's hope. There's hope. And also just to highlight the importance of community-based organizations, such as Spira, such YACO itself, helping immigrants to pass their citizenship exam, ESL organizations. I mean, we are full of community-based organizations, and I think the key to success is to utilize them, right? And remember that education could be as simple as helping somebody navigate through the system, which is also super important for immigrants, right? So I would like to thank you for your time, for your participation and commitment to this topic, which I think is vital for every family, for every student, for every parent, and for every community. The key to success is really through education. And I appreciate your time, your commitment, and participation on this little webinar. And thank you very much.
Agradecemos mucho su participación.
We appreciate your participation. Please do not forget to fill in the surveys. Remember that your response is absolutely private, confidential, and we will not compile any personal information. Your suggestions and comments will help us improve for future editions of our event. Thank you very much.